There's been a lot of talk about support for Palestine and the Palestinians, and whichever side of the debate you come down on, and whatever position you take, you seem to upset someone. So, I would like to lay out my thoughts in one handy and easy to digest piece, and as part of this, I would also like to respond to the British government's recent announcement that it has formally recognised the State of Palestine. I will begin by laying out my thoughts and feelings on Palestine, the Palestinian people, and their struggle. I support the Palestinian people in their struggle against the Zionist state of Israel. I support the Palestinian people's right to a nation-state in Palestine and believe that Palestine is the ancestral homeland of the Palestinian people. I support the Palestinian people flying their own flag in their own land and taking their destiny into their own hands in their ancestral homeland. As part of my wish to see Palestinians achieve a lasting homeland in Palestine, I wish to see Israeli forces and settlers pushed out of Gaza, the West Bank, and other Palestinian territories. I wish to see all Western support and military aid for Israel halted immediately, and all Israeli lobby groups investigated as hostile foreign agents that have deliberately and underhandedly subverted Western politics at the behest of a hostile foreign entity. I would also like to see all Western nations place sanctions on Israel and its leaders for the war crimes they have committed against the Palestinian people. Further to this, Western nations should comply with the International Criminal Court in order to help bring to justice those who have directed genocide against the Palestinian people. Further to my last point, I firmly believe that Israel's actions in Palestine amount to genocide. What's more, I don't believe any other nation or people on the planet would be able to get away with such heinous criminal acts. And I believe Israel gets away with their crimes for two reasons. Firstly, it's Jews who are carrying out the genocide, and it is virtually impossible to criticise Jews without being deplatformed, debanked, and even arrested and prosecuted. A large part of the fear surrounding criticising Jews is because they weaponise the Holocaust to silence their critics. Secondly, Israel, through organisations like AIPAC, has completely distorted American and Western foreign policy. Israel has achieved this by influencing Western politicians with bribes, by threatening those who don't support Israel with well-funded smear campaigns, and finally through more underhanded and coercive honey trap operations like the one ran by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. But why do I support the Palestinian struggle against the Zionist state of Israel? Firstly, from a moral point of view, I believe that all people deserve a place in the world, including the Palestinians, and seeing Israelis brutally slaughtering men, women and children and denying starving civilians aid is something that is morally abhorrent. Palestinians are being denied a homeland and are the victims of a genocide. I oppose this genocide in the same way I oppose white genocide. As such, I believe Europeans have something in common with Palestinians, in that we are both being wiped out. Secondly, from a European racial perspective, if Zionists get their way and achieve their dream of a greater Israel, we will see millions of Palestinians displaced. Many of them will head to Europe and will be welcomed by European governments. As an ethno-nationalist, whilst I support the Palestinians in Palestine, I do not want them in Europe. This would be a disaster for the European people and shift the demographic balance even further in the wrong direction. A home for the Palestinian people in Palestine is the morally correct stance, a stance which is in line with the ethno-nationalist belief that all peoples of the world deserve a home. A home for the Palestinian people in Palestine is also the correct stance from the perspective of those who care about demographic change in Europe and wish to see Europeans remain a majority in their ancestral homelands. So, am I happy about the British government recognising Palestine as a state? Well, this is a much more difficult question, as the answer is not a clear yes or a clear no. Whilst on the surface this seems like a good decision, as the British government are recognising that Palestinians exist, that Palestine exists and that both the people and the country have inalienable rights. However, the British government has not come to this decision for the right reasons, and their proclamation is hollow. Put simply, if the British government cared about Palestine and the Palestinian people, it would not be arming and assisting Israel in its genocidal campaign against the Palestinians. If the British government really cared for the Palestinians, it would immediately place sanctions on Israel, freezing the assets of both leading members of the Israeli establishment and of the nation state. Britain would also immediately ban the sale of arms to Israel by all British companies and prevent British companies from supplying material support to the State of Israel that could be used to aid the continued genocide of the Palestinian people. The British government will not do any of those things because they don't really care. In fact, the truth be told, the British government is in the pocket of Zionists and Jewish lobbyists, so the British state and British companies will continue to assist Israel in their campaign of genocide. So why has the British government recognised the state of Palestine? Well, sadly, the answer to this lies in the sorry demographic state of the UK. Put simply, the British government has to pander to the Muslim community living in Britain. The Muslim community is now so large and so well organised that alienating them would risk Labour losing dozens of seats up and down the country, and with both George Galloway and Jeremy Corbyn leading left-leaning parties that intend to pander to the Islamic vote at the next general election, Keir Starmer and the Labour establishment are desperate to convince the Muslim communities around Britain that they care about the Palestinians. As for Muslims, the slaughter of Palestinians is the biggest political issue at the current time. Let's be very clear. The move to recognise Palestine as a state isn't a sign of the British government taking a principled or moral stand, nor is it a sign of them standing up against Zionism. It is in fact a barometer of demographic change in the UK and how much power and sway the Muslim community as a whole now holds over UK politics. This policy of appearing to be in favour of Palestinians in order to curry support from Muslims is very similar to the way that Labour MPs in white working class areas are now adorning their offices with union flags and talking about how they wish to control immigration. These Labour MPs hate white people. They flood the country with migrants, but still want white voters to support them, so they cover themselves in the flag and tell white people what they want to hear. But there is one more issue I want to address, and that's the issue of the rising levels of support for Palestinians in the West, and specifically in Britain. On the surface, this is a good thing. More and more people are critical of Israel and Zionism, and more people are openly supporting the Palestinian cause. However, don't celebrate too soon. The vast majority of people who support the Palestinian cause in the UK are not the friends of ethno-nationalists or white people in general. The largest group of people who are supporting the Palestinian cause are of course Muslims, and to a lesser extent other migrant groups. Britain is now around 70% white British, which means 30% of the population is from a migrant background, and support for the Palestinian cause reflects the replacement of the indigenous people of the British Isles. You can now go to towns and cities in Britain that are covered in Palestinian flags. But again, this is not a good thing. This isn't some wonderful rejection of Zionism and Israeli power by white Britons. The places which have become a sea of Palestinian flags are areas where the white British people have been replaced and are now a minority. Worse still, in many cases, those flying these Palestinian flags come from the same communities that have groomed, sexually assaulted and trafficked hundreds of thousands of white British girls. Whilst white ethno-nationalists for the most part support the Palestinian cause, they certainly wouldn't want to live in an area or bring up their daughters in an area which was covered in Palestinian flags. That's why the Palestinian flag causes so much revulsion from white working class communities. They immediately associate the flag with the people who have preyed upon their sisters and daughters. Seeing a Palestinian flag being flown over Rotherham shouldn't fill any white nationalist with joy, as it is being flown over a town where thousands of white British girls were groomed, raped, and trafficked over a decades-long campaign of state-sanctioned abuse. The second largest group of people who support the Palestinian cause are white liberals. These are people who are firmly in the anti-racist camp and are opposed to the state of Israel, not because it is a Zionist and Jewish supremacist state, but because they believe it is a white supremacist state and an American outpost in the region. These people are so stupid that they actually believe Israel is America's pawn in the Middle East, rather than understanding the truth that America is a pawn of Israel and is completely dominated by a Jewish power structure. What's more, if you tried to explain the truth of the matter to these people, tried telling them who controls the media and how Israel controls America, they would likely contact the police and report you for committing a hate crime. These are the same white liberals who deny that the Muslim rape gangs even exist. They are the anti-racists that you see opposing anti-migrant demonstrations and will likely be the ones who campaign the hardest for Palestinians to be brought to the UK if Israel does manage to achieve its goal and takes over the entirety of Gaza and the West Bank. And this leads us on to another issue that must be addressed. Both the Muslim community and the white liberals who take up the Palestinian flag are not radicals or a fundamental threat to the British state. Ultimately, both of these groups, the Muslims living in Britain and the white liberals, are tolerated by the state despite their anti-Israel stance. This is because both of these groups provide a service to the state. One of them is brought here to replace white people. The other is made up of white people who support replacement migration. Neither of these groups are a friend to our cause. This leaves nationalists in a strange position, as whilst many nationalists correctly support the Palestinian cause and wish to see the West break free from the clutches of Israeli control and take Western foreign policy in a dramatically different direction, we have very little synergy with other groups who oppose Israel and support the Palestinian cause. Support for the Palestinian cause is the right choice, both morally and from an ethnocentric European standpoint. But support for other pro-Palestinian groups is another matter entirely.